Hi everyone, Leanne from Aussie Quick Quilt here. I've been asked so many times, but how do I quilt it? And I know a lot of you send them away to be done, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the long arm quilters. They do a fabulous job, but unfortunately it's the turnaround time. We at Aussie Quick Quilt like you to be able to go, oh, it's Johnny's birthday in 3 days' time. Grab your quilt kit that you've already ordered, get it done and quilt it yourself. So I'm about to show you our way, the least distressful way, I guess you'd say, that I found to quilt them. So hang on to your hats, girls and guys. Let's go. Before we start quilting, we have to baste our quilt together. With your 101 quilt basting spray, of course, the only one I'll put my name to, you've got your backing, your batting, and your quilt top. Now we always start quilting from the centre of the quilt out. Go down one way, turn it around and go back down the other. Now that'll make more sense when you see what I'm doing. We always unroll it from under your arm and roll it up on the outside. Otherwise you get this whole big bunch up and I see people wrestling with it. You'd be surprised what we see in class. But it really is much easier to unroll it from under the arm. So what I mean is I've got this here and we're going to unroll it this way and roll it back up that way, then turn the whole thing around. Sounds a bit complicated? It's not. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to pop our quilt under. Now I'm not going to quilt through the border. I'm going to lower my needle exactly where I want to start and lower my foot. Now when you're starting off, do have the quilt rolled up to the position you're going to start at. Here's all this rest of the quilt. What are you going to do with that? Either let the table take the weight as you start unrolling it, or leave this in your lap. Please don't let it drag on the floor. One, unless your floor is perfectly clean, it's going to get a little bit grotty. But more importantly, your machine, the feed dogs cannot possibly drag this whole thing through by itself. You're going to have to guide it. And I find the easiest way and the least way to get very, very tired, if you're going to do this in one go, you're going to get quite exhausted. So have it in your lap and let your lap take the weight. Pop your needle down exactly where you need to start. Now what you need to do is if you've got a Janome or one of the ones with a locking stitch, do hit your locking stitch. If not, you can do 2 stitches forward and reverse. Please don't get upset if you do 3 or 4, it doesn't really matter. But as you get up in levels and you start quilting, say our beautiful starmish for yourself, you can pull the bobbin thread from the bottom to the top and just tie that off. All we're going to do today is I'm going to use my locking stitch because I have one and I'm lazy. Pop your little button there and do your locking stitch. Right, once you've got it all together, you really don't need a walking foot. You, as I always say, walk your walking foot to the rubbish bin and stick it there. But because it's starting to work against everything you're doing, so I always just have a normal foot on and away we go. Now, there are several ways. I see people putting their arm through here, wrestling with it. I'm not really sure why. Hang on to it here and hang on to it here as you're starting. If you find that it's starting to pucker through here, because obviously it's 3 different pieces of fabric. So you've got your backing, your batting and your quilt top. Your quilt top has pieces in it, so they're going to move differently as well. So just smooth it out as you go. I do about 3 to 4 inches at a time, readjust. 3 to 4 inches at a time, readjust. It sounds like it's a long process, but it's really not once you get the hang of it. And it's also certainly much faster than sending it away to get quilted. So I'm going to hang on to it here and here because this is only a single bed quilt. And I'm just doing stitch in the ditch for this one. I will show you in another video free motion quilting, but right now, just very basic stitch in the ditch. And then readjust, smooth it out if I need to, and help feed that through. You don't have to do it as fast as I'm doing it. If you've got your little rabbit and turtle up here, your speed control, you can put it down lower until you get the hang of that. But please, please, please have a go. There's nothing more satisfying than finishing a quilt all by yourself. If you do the top and you send it away, You're a patchworker, not a quilter. I want to be a quilter, but I want to be my kind of quilter. Do a little, unravel it. Feed a bit more through. Now you can see it's wanting to pucker here, so I just stretch it back out again. And you're just following that ridge. You will feel where you need to stitch because you've got, I guess, a higher and a lower side. Just feel that ridge and stitch in that ditch. When we get to the other end, just smooth it all out. Work towards your border, locking stitch. And away we go. So I've done one whole row of quilting. Now we're going to pull it back this way. Now you can see I unrolled it from this side and I'm going to roll it up that side and start all over again. If you're doing, let's say, a bargello, there you go, something with much smaller squares. If you're doing an Aussie bargello, you would go down one row and up the other, because even if it only pulls it slightly, that actually stops that bending, just like we did in our piecing videos. So you go down one and up the other. If you don't know what I mean, go back and have a look at the piecing video. Starting again, locking stitch. And away we go. Now you can have it holding it here and here. I find it much easier than having my hands here. Here you tend to lean on it a little bit much. So grab hold and just feed it through. The machine itself is doing the work, you're just holding that weight for it. Okay, so continue down all your lines, and when I get to the other end, I'll show you what I'm talking about, turning it round. I've finished quilting all the way down one way. We don't go right around the outside yet because we can then readjust it if we have any little micro adjusts, any fudge factors, any hiccups. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the whole quilt and turn it all around. What I mean by that is I'm taking it out of here, turning the whole thing around, and I'm rolling it back to where I started in the middle. If you want to, you know, you can jump up and lay it out on the table again and readjust it all. Pick the whole thing back up, pop it back in my lap, under the machine, making sure you've got everything else out of the way. Needle down again, and away we go again. Once you've done all your vertical lines, head back to a table, fold it over, turn it 90 degrees and fold it again, and then you can do all your horizontal lines. I'll see you back here when you finish that. Excellent. Now what we need to do is go right around the whole outside. Now what I mean by that is the inside of the border, not the outside. I see so many people stitching around here. Really no need to, and you're going to have to undo it all anyway. The reason we don't stitch there is once you're doing here, you need to be able to straighten it, and in our next video we're going to show you trimming the outside of the quilt. So if you've stitched there, all we're going to do is chop it all off anyway. So pop it back under the machine, start in one corner, and once again stitch in the ditch right round the whole outside of the quilt, but the inside of the border. I'll see you back here when you're done. And we're done. That's as hard as it needs to be to quilt a quilt. You will notice on this one, we're doing 8-inch squares. Obviously, if you want to do more quilting, you can. You really don't need to. The batting we use supports up to 10 inches apart, but you might want to do some fancy things in the middle, put the baby's name, whatever you want to do, you can do that. You can embellish it however you like. However, there's really no need. Now, I'll hand you over to Emily for our trimming video.